At least he's now on the phone with his lawyer again. There's still no charge. He has still not been charged with a crime. This is still on the whole, oh,
There
Marco
won't
Rubio
be.
said
Well,
so.
yeah.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Blue Sedition podcast. I'm your host, Nate Brady, alongside
Co-hosting here with his good friend Mike Smith. How y'all doing today?
Yeah, good friend, very good friend. I'm gonna have to ask my good friend. He's gonna have to calm me down this episode, keep me calm, because I'm mad, man. I'm pretty mad.
I'm gonna try and bring in the meditative state, keep my voice nice and even and low, and I think we can get through this.
No, I want you to get mad with me.
Okay.
Because
What are you mad about?
anything else feels like a violation of our friendship and our trust.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know. I think we just get right into it. Let's
dive in.
Skip all the pleasantries and all that other nonsense and just dive right in.
Yeah.
And today's episode is probably primarily going to be about Mahmoud Khalil. And I mean, unless you're living under a rock, you probably know the basics of the story, which is,
since you're listening to the Blue Sedition podcast, you know the bare minimum of this story.
And if you clicked on it because you saw the title, which probably has his name in it, you'll probably also know the basics of the story. But in case you don't know, we'll do a quick get you up to speed. Mahmoud Khalil is a Columbia graduate student. He resides, I believe, on or around campus, campus housing, or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
He has been involved in protests on campus.
These are the pro Gazan people's protests that happened at the end of last year.
Yeah. And so he has spoken out against the Israeli government and the atrocities committed in Gaza. And because of that, he has been the target of doxing campaigns, threats, all kinds of different smear campaigns. Particularly, there have been several organizations that have tried to put words in his mouth, basically, for a lack of better word, and say that he is pro-Hamas or engaged in terrorist activity, none of which, as you'll find out, there is any proof of. So I want to say, I mean, how many days ago was it now? I'm trying to figure out, find the exact date, because I forget. But he was,
I think it was about a week ago he was detained.
Yeah.
If that's what you're getting at.
Yeah. So ICE, the federal government, came knocking on his door. I believe they interrupted him, just after dinner, getting home, and said, basically, your student visa has expired or has been revoked, and we're taking you in.
It was revoked. It hadn't expired.
And he doesn't even have a student visa. And so this was the first, like, what's going on here? Is Khalil?
Oh, right.
Khalil
the
said,
claim was,
he said, I don't have a student visa. I have a green card. And so ICE agents got on the phone and overheard saying, well, what do we do? He doesn't even have a student visa. He has a green card. And whoever was on the other line allegedly said, well, tell him his green card has been revoked then. Like, this was very poorly planned by ICE. And so they told him, okay,
at the very least, they didn't have proper information.
Right.
I mean, it shows just, if not a hurried and rushed response, then at the very least, ill-informed.
Right. So ICE took him away from his home, away from his 8-month, pregnant wife, and disappeared.
Who's an American citizen.
Who is an American citizen. Her parents are from Syria, I believe, but she is an American citizen. And they just disappeared him. No contact with his family, no contact with lawyers. They just took him away. And according to a website that tracks, ICE detainees, he was supposedly, just hours later in a location in Louisiana, which is just wild. So that catches you up. I'll let you
The kind
jump.
of thing that keeps you up at night, for
Yeah,
sure. As an often dissenter against the terrible things that this country does all the time, both parties, makes me think twice about potentially saying some things. Because if they're willing to do it to people who are here legally, which is their claim, they only want to get the violent criminals who are here illegally, and yet they're going to revoke a green card of a legal United States visitor in this way. I don't know where that line is, right? Is that the line? Are they going after the violent criminals and the green card holders that they disagree with, who speak out against them? Are they going to go out against anyone who speaks out against them?
yeah. So I think
Are we going to, are Nate and I going to get deported?
I think
Where are they going to take us?
yeah. So it's important first to yeah. I mean, we are the Blue Sedition podcast, right? I mean, we're probably already on a list just for the name.
I guarantee we are saying the same things on this podcast on a weekly basis that this person was championing as part of the protests during that time. I think that you and I both think that what Israel has done in Gaza constitutes a genocide, potentially.
I mean,
The,
we're not the only ones that think this. The International
no, of course not. But
Court,
what I'm saying is that we're all saying, you and I are saying
right?
the same things that this guy said.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
guess the difference is just that we don't go to Columbia.
Well, the difference is we don't
This is
have a green
Columbia
card,
University for
right?
those, just to make sure that we're clear. This is
Yeah,
on U.S. soil in the United States.
right. So I want to go through this article kind of step by step because there's a lot of things that are just alarming and that we need to call out in this article,
Yeah.
and I
Yep.
think it will help set the proper tone for what is happening here. So this is an article from thefire.org. You can find it in our show notes. The title is Trump's Administration's Reasons for Detaining Mahmoud Khalil Threaten Free Speech. Certainly the title says it all. So I'm just going to kind of read through it, and then maybe we can riff on the paragraphs. But there are some important points in here. It's not a very long article, but I'll read through it for our listeners in the car or on other platforms. So it's been 3 days since the government arrested and detained Mahmoud Khalil for deportation. This afternoon, the administration finally stated the basis for its actions. Its explanation threatens free speech of millions of people. This next paragraph, I cannot believe this next paragraph. Yesterday, an administration official told the Free Press, the allegation here is not that Khalil was breaking the law. This was confirmed today by White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who announced Khalil is being targeted under a law that she characterized as allowing the Secretary of State to personally deem individuals adversarial to the foreign policy and national security interests of the United States of America. Mike, break down what this means.
This is a very old policy. This is from U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act, INA, shorthand. I don't even know how to read these things. Section 237A4C, which addresses the deportability of non-citizens involved in espionage, sabotage, export law violations, or similar activities that threaten U.S. national security or foreign policy. So like they said. However, it specifically states that non-citizens are deportable if they've engaged in or pose a risk of engaging in anything that might be considered espionage. This is ostensibly a McCarthyism, if you will, where they were targeting people who simply didn't align with the goals that the administration set forth. So this is saying that while he's committed no crimes and has done nothing wrong, he poses a risk to do so in the future. And so they're deporting him and canceling his green card.
Okay, so
I don't have anything better to say than that's
insane.
thought police there, and it's bananas.
So Leave It said Khalil sided with terrorists, organized group protests that disrupted college campus classes and harassed Jewish American students and made them feel unsafe, and distributed pro Hamas propaganda. She also said the Department of Homeland Security is trying to track down other individuals who have engaged in pro Hamas activity at Columbia University. So, okay. I mean, there's so. There,
I unfortunately have engaged with more of the devil's advocates in these things than I care to mention. But a lot of these boil down to a few things. So first off, the pro-Hamas propaganda is their spin.
right.
Basically, anything that's pro-Palestinian or pro-Gaza as like a independent state
Pro not
is
murdering innocent civilians in Gaza, right?
they're basically in the current admin. There is no distinction between pro-Gazan or pro Palestinians versus pro Hamas. If you are, pro ceasefire because it's murdering Palestinians, that is pro Hamas. And so the first thing is just their that framing makes you feel like, if you're not really aware of this, it makes it sound like the guy is a terrorist advocate, which he's not.
Right.
The second thing is the uh the disrupted college campus classes. Okay, that's protesting, which we knew about at Columbia because they eventually called in the police to break heads. But the second part is and harassed Jewish American students and made them feel unsafe. This was apparently in describing the events that were going on during those protests, where they had printed out leaflets that
Right.
had iconography on them of the Star of David, like stamping down on the Gazan people, the Palestinians. And the claim here is that that's somehow anti-Semitic, when that is quite clearly the flag of Israel. Yeah, they're hiding behind the Star of David to make it seem like this is an anti-Semitic act, but that's their flag. That's the flag of the nation encroaching on Gaza and the Palestinian people. And so the iconography there doesn't really track with what they're saying. They're saying that it made, and I can't speak to this, but they're saying it made Jewish students feel unsafe or unwelcome. I can't speak to that. What I can say is that it wasn't plastering of swastikas or throwing your hand up in the air like Elon Musk. It's nothing that is truly and obviously anti-Semitic.
Okay. So yeah, everything Mike said, totally accurate. I want to touch on a few things. Neither Mike nor I know Khalil, right? We only know all of the information that's been presented to us, all of the public information that's out there.
Right.
I know Jewish Americans who also agree with Khalil. And I know, and I've seen interviews from Jewish Americans at Columbia University who say they have not felt unsafe because of Khalil's protests, and they agree with the things that he is saying. There is a very specific group, which I guess I'll just switch over to another article before we finish this one because I think it's in here. There's another pro-Israel organization called Batar that in January the group posted that Khalil said Zionists don't deserve to live, and Khalil again unequivocally denied making the statement. This was in an email to Columbia University. Khalil said he feels threatened, he feels unsafe, he needs Columbia University to step up. Khalil's arguing, prove that I've made anybody feel unsafe by stating that Gazans, that Palestinians have a right to live. I haven't said anything or done anything. There's nothing out there that I've said other than this, other than protesting the right-wing extremism and the atrocities going on in Gaza. Now I'm being threatened. They're making up lies. They're doxing him. They're giving his home address out. They're tagging ICE and Marco Rubio in posts public posts on X. I mean, you can see it all. You can see everything that this group has done to Khalil, but for some reason you can't find any information about Khalil saying the things he supposedly said to these other groups. It's just not true.
Right.
And
It,
so
it feels like deliberate canvassing, or what do they call it? Astroturfing of this story. Like they're trying to find a scapegoat for this protest that had occurred. And he was a prominent voice in those protests at that time, but none of the evidence points to anything of the nature they're alleging.
So I want to just read this email before we go back to finish the other article. Citing the Batar Post, Khalil asked Armstrong, an administrator at Columbia, in his email. He says, and I quote, "With the stakes being so high, I ask you, as representatives of Columbia University's administration, how will you protect international students from doxing and from deportation? How will you protect these students' rights to free speech, expression, and association, rights provided for in the U.S. Constitution and, to a lesser degree, this is me saying that, Columbia's Code of Conduct, and stop the suppression and now potential criminalization of that speech and expression? Students' futures, their livelihoods, and now, without exaggeration, exaggerating, their lives are at risk." I mean, first of all well written email, well said. Who wants to go to Columbia now? You know, who after this, I mean, would feel safe going to Columbia?
If I'm, on a student visa, or if I have a green card, or if I'm not just a several generation American born citizen, then I'm not even considered. It's not on my short list. It has lost that in my eyes, because
Yeah,
they're not going to support you. They're
right.
just not. So it's a shame. It's one of the institutions, and we talked about this a little bit offline, but we might as well bring it up here. But they're the institution that had basically bent the knee to the Trump rhetoric, the MAGA folks, and basically they were calling for a crackdown and a shutdown of these protests at the time. And this is while Biden was president. These are the minority voices in the government at the time, basically saying, like, send in SWAT teams, send in the riot
Mm-hmm.
brigade,
Mm-hmm.
have them break these up forcibly, hurt people and end these things, which they did end up doing. And now Colombia, who has done everything that they were asked of, is having $400 million in aid cut from the federal budget up against them. I mean,
Good,
it's a direct
good.
targeting
I mean,
of them saying, you did exactly what we told you to do, and now we're cutting your funding.
we bet
So there's no reason for any of these other institutions to believe that any amount of kowtowing to this administration will keep you out of their sights.
yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going to read, I don't have to read the rest of the article. It's basically then goes into a little bit about the law that Mike already kind of detailed. But I do
They'll be
want
in
to,
the show.
I want to point out, okay, yes, there are often times when there is any, I don't want to say situation, but any event like the one that's happening in Gaza right now, or there's some real divisive thing happening in the
Right.
world, you're always going to have kind of those extremist supporters of each faction, on each side. You're going to have
Right.
really bad people, whether they're opportunists, whether they're, whether they actually believe in the cause, whether they're just trying to hurt people, whatever it is, you're going to have those types of people on both sides. If you're on one side of this issue and you don't believe that
Yeah.
there are also extremists on your side, you're just wrong. And Mike and I
Right.
understand that there are people, on our side of this issue that are doing it wrong. And we wish they wouldn't do it that way, because they make it look bad for the rest of the cause. But there is no indication that Khalil was one of those people. So far from everything that we can see, he protested peacefully, he organized peacefully, he organized well within his right as a legal resident of the United States and on the campus of Columbia, without violating any of their rules and any of the laws of the United States. He did everything within the bounds, legally, within the,
Right.
and still, as a legal citizen of the United States, was taken away, was disappeared. And by the
Yeah,
and the campus can't even, Columbia can't even
no,
show
they're
that.
out of it here.
Yeah, well, I mean, they
They,
can't.
they not only can they not show any like proof that to the contrary here,
Right.
but there are a handful of people who were protesting with him, and they're sharing the artifacts that they have out of that. They're like, here's the pamphlets that we were handing out, and you can see our deliberate messaging. Here are our scripts that we had when we were trying to talk with people who were counter protesters. Basically, they're saying like, here's the way to engage with people who are not thinking the same way we are or against the protests at all, and how to try and engage with them in ways that are helpful. Here's where you can see the history of this document being drafted, and he's a part of it. And they have tons of evidence showing them that they're like, we need this to be nonviolent, we need this to be inclusive, we need this to be disruptive but not violent. Like they have a lot of evidence that shows that. They don't have any evidence that shows him being like, death to the oppressor or whatever they think he's
And if
shouting.
and if they did, by the way, we would see it literally everywhere. You'd see it on
It would be
X. You see
everywhere.
it.
It would be plastered to every single
Right.
social media site. It would be all
Right.
over. It would be the only thing Fox News would be running right now.
There's not one student on Columbia that can provide proof or show. I mean, at these protests, everybody's taking video. Everybody's
Right.
doing whatever. I've heard interviews
Yeah.
with him. I've done my research. I've listened to everything he has to say. I've listened to Columbia professors speak about him eloquently. I mean, by any stretch, he is probably much more tame than I would be in his
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
That I'm even feeling right now how angry I am about this situation. I'm really impressed with him actually.
Yeah. We were talking about this offline, but Nate was saying something along the lines of, I'm going to have to start protesting. I'm going to have to get out there and become an activist in this way. And I'm like, there's no way that you could be as calm and as rational as this guy. They'll arrest you in a second.
No, I mean, I'm being serious. I mean, I feel the need. My wife and I, before we had our son, who is now 6 years old, we spent a lot of time. We've gone to marches, we've gone to protests, we've spent a lot of time in the LA area fighting for what we believed in. We were threatened on multiple occasions. I think you remember the story when we were canvassing for Bernie. One door that we knocked on, the guy said, "You stay right there. I'm gonna go grab my gun." I mean, we've been in it, and I'm ready to get back in it. I probably should have been before, but this situation is really, really alarming because this threatens all of us. It's not just Khalil and his wife, who, by the way, they also said they would arrest if she, because she tried to get in between
Right.
them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she's lucky that, I mean, she's not lucky. She's probably a very intelligent person, and they're prepared for this. They know that the government is very anti their protesting, anti their messaging. And so I'm sure they had a plan of when the feds show up, here's the plan of what to do. So she knew, stay indoors, keep her baby close, do not give them the opportunity to come in, do not don't leave the door open for any extended amount of time. Like they knew what they were doing in that, and I recommend everybody else do as well, because don't trust the cops. But
Yeah. So I want to actually back up for a second and, well, not really correct, but fix a part of the intro to this story, which is that the ICE agent, was actually speaking to Amy Greer, which was Khalil's lawyer, when they were taking Khalil from into custody. And the agent was telling Greer that his student visa had been revoked, and Greer, Khalil's lawyer, was the one that said he has permanent residence. He's in possession of a green card. And then the agent responded, "Well, we're going to revoke the green card instead." And then Greer
right, okay.
said, "Well, we need to see a warrant before Khalil can be detained." And the agent hung up
Right,
on
right.
Greer.
Just a shocking admission of the just the illegality of the situation. The fact that he knows that he's got nothing. They have an order to arrest this kid for no reason. He gets there and trumps up something about his visa expiring. And when a lawyer who's well informed says he doesn't have a visa, he's an American citizen he holds a green card, making him an American citizen. He said, "We're revoking that too." And she's like, "You need a warrant for that." And he's like, "I better hang up and just arrest this kid before it becomes a whole to-do."
Yeah.
Like, those are the types of people that this administration, employs. They just ham-fisted, illegal search and seizure and detain.
So some updates here, at least, is we know on the 10th that a judge ordered a stay. So there was not going to be an immediate deportation. And
Right.
then the day before, on the 9th, Greer filed a writ of habeas corpus. And so the next day, Jesse Furman ruled that Jesse Furman ruled that Khalil could not be removed. And then apparently today, which I was not up to date yet as of today, there was a hearing today. Lawyers asked that he be returned to New York, and then Judge Furman ordered that Khalil be allowed his attorney-client privileged phone calls again, and that both the government and Khalil's lawyers submit plans on March 14th for further arguments. So at least he's now on the phone with his lawyer again. There's still no charge. He has still not been charged with a crime. This is still on the whole, oh, Marco Rubio said so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
what they're going to do, and just circling back to it, because we did bring it up earlier, that whole INA section 237, the Secretary of State is basically at liberty under this ruling to revoke like green card and visa statuses just as a matter of course.
Right.
So he's not going to get charged with anything. They're going to revoke his citizenship and then say, "You're an illegal alien now, so we're deporting you." There's no crimes involved. There's no court cases therein. So the fact that that the Secretary of State's allowed to do this is ridiculous.
Right.
And that there's not going to be any actual like judicial remedy to it is just furthering my rage.
Right.
Because the courts will say we have no jurisdiction there because it's a law. It's the law on the books, and it says plainly the Secretary of State has this authority. And so they can do it. They can revoke citizenship for the people who came here the right way, as the grand old party loves to say.
Right.
They did the right thing. They're trying to improve America by getting an education and a job here. And these are the people they claim to want. They're going to revoke his United States citizenship and deport him. No charges, no criminal activity, no violence, nothing.
And I have to say, the Democratic response to this has been abysmal. I mean,
I hate to use the word flaccid again on stream, but I did. I used it just now. That's what it's been. Because God damn it, are the Democrats willing to just roll over on things like this?
And the framing, it's clear who is funded by AIPAC and who isn't, right? Because isn't it so obvious?
Yes.
I mean,
no, I just to put it in a different position, like we're 6 months ago at this point, right? Maybe 8 months ago. I'm not remembering the exact time frame, but it was very clear during that campaign, the Harris campaign, that pro-Palestinian positions were not welcome in the Democratic caucus. Like that was not a line that they were willing to support.
Right.
They were kicked out of, the protesters were kicked out of rallies. They were not invited to speak at public speaking events when going through the proper avenues and channels. And there was a hard party line of, we do not talk about the Palestinians outside of their plight. We're not going to point fingers. We're not going to say who's responsible. We're going to say they need aid, but we're not going to say why and who is causing the damage that would necessitate such aid. That's not what we're talking about. And now Chuck Schumer is trying it again. Oh, it's just so painful.
They're always sneaking in it. They're trying to find a way Chuck Schumer is like, I got to balance all of my donors, everybody that fills my coffers. How do I do this? Okay, when I make a statement about the obvious illegal detainment of Khalil, I have to make sure that I pepper in all the anti-Semitic talking points that I can fit in there, and he does it masterfully. If I can give Chuck Schumer credit for anything, it's that, man, he is able. The Nancy Pelosi's, the Chuck Schumers, all of these quote unquote successful politicians have such a way with peppering in and walking that very thin line of appearing democratic, but also, not pissing off their donors, right?
Yeah. I mean, it starts from the position of a pre-submission or supposition of guilt here. His final sentences start with, if the administration cannot prove he has violated any criminal law. Like, just take a stance. Say that we do not see from the evidence that this he has violated any criminal law. Make a positive, you know, non-passive voice stance. Say, we don't see that. Be a fighter in your caucus. But he's just like, well, if they can't prove it, then maybe that's fine and it's not a big deal.
We need more.
So bad.
We need more Crockett's. We need more of those types. So somebody says, "Where's AOC?" There were 14 House Democrats that signed this letter calling for the immediate release of Mahmoud Khalil, and AOC is not on here. Now, I will say I didn't dig deeply into why she didn't sign this letter, but I did go to her, Twitter page and see that she's yelling just as loudly about this. I'm not sure why she didn't sign this. I'm not sure why every single House Democrat didn't sign this, except that I know the reasons and we just talked about them, right?
Right.
So we're obviously going to be following this very closely. This is really important because, again, he has not done or said anything that Mike and I haven't said ourselves, both on this podcast, on our platform on Blue Sky, on other platforms, publicly in other places. If
on the street, yelling at protesters from the other side.
If Khalil is considered an enemy of the United States for simply speaking his mind against the atrocities going on in Gaza, then millions of Americans are also deemed adversaries.
It's a really simple line from the position we see with the evidence we've been shown. It's that the First Amendment protects your free speech or it doesn't. And
right.
Right at the moment, it looks like it doesn't. If you are a green card holder or on a student visa or otherwise legally in the country, but not a nationalized born citizen.
Right.
Terrifying. Frankly, it's not altogether surprising given the way that we've talked about this administration and their stated goals and now their executed goals. This is the plan. This has always been the plan. This is what they campaigned on. This is how Trump has always spoken about immigrants. And it does, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter that he's nonviolent, that he's not a criminal, that he's committed no crimes, because just by virtue of him being here and from somewhere else, that is a crime in this administration's view. They've done some wrong by being, born in a country other than the United States, come here and become a citizen.
So I am hopeful that the justice system will work in this particular case. And, so far, it seems like the federal judge, who I haven't, I don't know much about, I haven't really dug in to that particular judge, but they seem to be doing all the right things in temporarily blocking the deportation, pending a hearing, opening back up attorney-client, privilege and all of that stuff. So it looks like we'll get more information on the 14th. It's still crazy that he's being detained.
Right.
seemingly cut off from his family and his lawyers other than a phone call. We don't know. We haven't heard from him directly. We don't know what kind of conditions he's being held under. So, I mean, yeah, this is if this fails, if Khalil is deported, um, that,
Okay. I know I'm supposed to have like the voice that calms and all that, but this is not the issue that will be happening on. I'm going to change your statement to a when this occurs, because I feel like this is the same issue that we have been talking about since his first administration. But this is the same thing with Trump and his, and his Doge doing things that are completely illegal, and judges are ordering them to stop the freezes on fundings and things like that. And there's only one uh, remedy to these things enshrined by the Constitution. When the president is acting in a legal way and a court rules that he must not do that, and he does it anyway, the only remedy is an impeachment.
right.
This House has basically said bald-facedly, we are not going to impeach the president. We don't care if he's violating the law. The same will be true for this, I believe. I think that he's going to win all his court cases. The judges will order that he be returned, his green card, and be returned as a United States citizen, having committed no crimes and no reason to be deported. I believe the Secretary of State will flex his duly appointed powers here and have him deported anyway. And we're going to have our first case of an American citizen being deported.
So I will say, speaking to the
Against the
impeachment
will
thing,
of the judiciary.
right, right. I will say, regarding the impeachment, I listened to an interview with Al Green on Democracy Now! I believe it was yesterday or the day before. And I think he said he was going to do it today or tomorrow. And maybe he'll have to revise it now based on what we're seeing with Khalil. But Al Green is going to introduce articles of impeachment in the House as it was as early as today. So, we're getting close to the end of the day today, but I know it's going to happen. He presented, by the way, articles of impeachment against Trump during his first term in 2017, and he called for it again in 2019, but the House voted to table his resolution in 2019. First of all, why is 80-year-old
That's
Al
what will
Green,
happen again, but
right?
yeah, I mean that's a fair question. Sorry, why is Al Green the last vestige of protection for the American democracy?
I mean, this man has to hold up his cane, and wave it and yell, and other Democrats are going, "Shh, you gotta play that. Hold up your sign instead. Hold up your little sign. What are you doing? Be good, quiet."
Yeah.
What about decorum?
Which Democrats are saying? Oh, the decorum Democrats. Yes.
What about decorum?
Schooners and
the president of the United States is at the podium calling people the R word. He's tweeting from the official White House account. The most insane shit you've ever seen in your life. And Democrats are like, I agree. We censure.
And he did that with this one too, didn't he? He I forgot about that, but Trump did post on his True Social account. He called Mahmoud Khalil a violent criminal and everything else, right?
Yeah, probably.
He basically said, I mean, he knows nothing, obviously, but I sort of remember him doing that, but I mean, he spouts that sort of nonsense so often I might have been cross wires.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is that we've got elected Democrats who are so willing to just take the L and then campaign for more money on the back of it. They would really love for this to go as horribly as possible so that they can campaign on never again a Mahmoud Khalil, and then they'll match your dollars up to midnight.
Yeah, exactly. They'll 10x match you if you rush in your donation now. I want to play this stupid clip from Trump, which kind of lets the cat out of the bag, right? So let's play this here.
There's been a lot of together, and if they don't vote, then what you're going to do is you're going to have taxes that are going to go through the roof. You're going to have a very bad time. You're going to have some very bad things happen, and people are going to blame the Democrats. And Schumer is a Palestinian, as far as I'm concerned. He's become a Palestinian. He used to be Jewish. He's not Jewish anymore. He's a Palestinian. Okay.
Okay. So what the fuck does that even mean? Well, I'll tell you what he thinks it means.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, if you think my reading of this is wrong, okay? First of all, Trump thinks that Palestinian is a slur, okay? So when he says that Schumer is a Palestinian, what he means, what he's trying to say is that he's pro-Hamas, he's a terrorist, he lets the whole game, this is the whole game plan from the GOP, is that anybody who sides with the opposition or goes against their right-wing extremism is a terrorist. That's what he's trying to say here.
Yeah, they're washing the ideas, just like we said earlier. They're conflating the notion of I am pro-Palestine, I am pro the Gazan people, with I am pro-Hamas, which are not the same.
It's not the same thing.
That's like me saying I am pro-America, I am pro-Republican. Those are not the same thing, and I am only one of them. It's not the GOP.
It's not.
And so they're trying to get it into the zeitgeist here that being pro-Palestinian or being Palestinian is somehow, ancillary to terrorists. So you're like, just by having that stigma on you, so that you just won't get anything taken seriously. So you're absolutely right. He's trying to use it as a slur here, but their whole game plan is associate being Palestinian or pro-Gazan with the terrorist sect of Hamas, and we're just going to tell that narrative that way. So now, that's horrible and just gross at its face. But I mean, I'm not surprised by this stupid orange idiot saying it that way.
Well, speaking of idiots and slurs, we'll come here so I can play this clip as well.
Oh God,
and handing out leaflets.
Yeah, I hate this guy too.
Free speech has limitations, but when you go to a college campus, you incite protesting and locking down and taking over buildings and damaging property and handing out leaflets for Hamas, who is a terrorist organization. Coming to this country either on a visa or becoming a resident alien is a great privilege, but there are rules associated with that.
Okay, so he snuck in two new things that haven't been said anywhere.
No one had alleged.
Nobody has said this. So he's locking down buildings and he's damaging property. The school would never allow that. I want to remind people, maybe like I don't think I mentioned this before, but Khalil was the lead negotiator between the students and the Gazan encampment group and Colombia. He was the lead negotiator that managed to have talks between the administration and that group. He was doing everything the right way. He was not involved in damaging property. He was not locking down buildings. I mean, and the media, Fox News, is going to run this willy-nilly,
Right. So just for clarification, because I think that they're purposefully doing this in a dubious fashion, so we should inform. But at the end of those pro-Palestinian protests on Columbia's campus, there were protesters who took over a building belonging to Columbia University, and they locked it from the inside and barricaded themselves against the police presence that had come to bust heads and break up the protests. That definitely happened.
Yeah.
He was not part of that.
Right.
He was not anywhere near that.
Right.
He was begging the police to stop shooting people with tear gas and hitting them with bats.
Yeah. I mean,
so now that fat-mouthed idiot is conflating this thing that happened with the person who didn't do it and wasn't present or party to it, and that's why he's being deported, because he's not following the rules, and he's lost his privilege of being a United States citizen, and it's just so blatantly evil and stupid at the same time.
And I just want to state the obvious here. His wife is 8 months pregnant. He knows this. He was working within the confines of the law. He was working for peace. He was he was the lead negotiator. He knew that he was going to be a target of, of ICE. He states that he's always had a fear of it. He emailed Colombia several times asking what are they going to do to protect their students. I mean, the kid couldn't have done things any more correctly as you would want a protester, somebody exercising their constitutional rights to protest in the United States to do. This is exactly the type of protester you want to have in the United States, if you care about that at all.
If you think that First Amendment freedom guarantees you the right to peaceful protest and assembly, which it does if you take the words as they're written in that order.
Yeah. So
any schoolboy can tell you that, yeah, those words in that order mean that. We should be just raising those types of voices up. They are important to have in a working democracy. We need people protesting when there are problems.
So, okay, like I said, we'll be following the story more closely as it develops. We're hope to hear some good news on the 14th. I'm not sure we'll get it by then. But man,
yeah, it's the same bit over and over again. It's well, I hope that this administration does what the courts have ordered them.
But we can't stop putting the pressure on. But it's not even on us. It's on the people that we've elected as our representatives to stand up and put an end to this. I mean, for God's sakes, Turtle Man McConnell was able to prevent Barack Obama from putting a Supreme Court justice on. I mean, I know we're in the minority, but we need to be the loud minority. We need to do everything we can to block these types of things, to block anything the GOP wants to do, especially until things like this get resolved. This is insane. Right. It's insane.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. Especially when these things feel so emergent, like they feel like they have real, like, seconds and minutes importance to us as a nation, as opposed to weeks from now. Like a lot of court cases that you hear about, you're like, that'll get worked out over the coming weeks and months in the courts, and that'll be fine. But this type of thing, this overreach from the administration, and its dubious legality, and it's obviously amoral positioning, is something that feels like it deserves more attention and volume from our elected officials.
It really does. It really, really does. Like I said, we need more Jasmine Crockett's. We need more people like that who are clearly not beholden to some lobby and are speaking up for what's right. And I'm just not seeing that. I'm seeing people tiptoeing and being worried about their political careers. And man, I'm ashamed right now. I'm ashamed of the Democratic Party. I'm embarrassed by it. I'm embarrassed by the current administration. Obviously, I just have to say it to make sure people don't say, "What about Trump?" Obviously, what I'm upset about is Trump, and everybody says this to me. The reason why I'm so mad at the Democratic Party is because of how terrible Trump and the GOP is, and the fact that we're not rising up to the occasion.
Yeah, we've made it very clear, as a third of the country has anyway, that Trump and his lot are, antithetical to our way of life and to particularly our political leanings. So, like, when we elect you, the Democrats, we expect you to resonate with that and maybe, I don't know, shout it a bit, get on the news and get loud about the fact that your constituents, the people who put you there, want you to fight this. Very frustrating. But I go a different direction and say that I'm never surprised when the Democrats fail in this regard. They have for many years constantly failed to rise to this need, and it's disappointing. But you can't hurt me if I don't expect it anymore.
Yeah, fair. Okay, so do we have other stories that we want to talk about today? I mean, we could talk about this one for a while. I'm hoping we get more information soon. But let's talk about some other things.
You want to talk about tariffs? There's been basically a roller coaster ride on the tariff front for the last week. I think last week when we reported this on the podcast, we said that there had been like a drop in the tariffs, like or maybe a stay for Canada, but not Mexico. I don't even remember because we've gone up and down
Yeah.
on tariffs back and forth from both countries for so long now. It's just crazy to me. I think the last that I heard, Canada, northeastern Canada had, well, I guess for them it's southeastern Canada. Our northeast had imposed a 25% tariff markup on electricity provided to those United States close to the border, because it's a sharing of resources ostensibly. And in a response to that, Trump had come out and said he's going to do reciprocal, but then double the tariffs. He's like, I'm going to make
50% on steel and aluminum, right?
Yeah. I mean, and so the tariff game just keeps getting played out. I think that they are. Where are they now, Nate? Do you have?
So right now it's still at 25%. Trump or the Trump team had negotiation with Ontario's premier and said, okay, wait, please don't do the electric tariff thing, and we won't do the 50% thing. Like let everybody calm down. And then obviously the Trump team is trying to spin that as a win. There are still there are now a ton of exemptions now for Canada, Mexico, and China that are all getting added back. But the Trump administration is planning to implement global reciprocal tariffs and 25% additional tariffs on lumber and copper starting on April 2nd. So they're still going there.
So there's no end in sight for tariffs.
There's no end in sight. It's only going to get worse. Australia, I think, is starting to talk about
that was the latest
tariffs.
As of today. Yeah, I saw.
So I mean, it's this is so stupid. Everything Trump does is he's trying to spin everything as a win, right? Because the way that Trump sees this trade war or global economics as a whole is that there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser. He doesn't see it any other way, and he has to be the winner.
He's a capitalist, so he thinks that the world revolves around capital and pretty much nothing else. So it's an exchange of goods and services for capital, and the country with the most capital wins, for lack of a better explanation. Ignoring, of course, that there are people involved in this process somewhat as well. Because that's sort of important, and a lot of capitalists forget that. I just looked this up because I was curious about the Australia thing, and I just was trying to figure out what Australia even exports to the U.S. and it's like sheep and goat's meat is one of their big exports, as well as vaccines. Weirdly enough, apparently that's one of the big issues that maybe they're taking there, which I'm surprised. I'm not surprised to hear about meats and things like that, because they have a lot of grazing space. So I know that they have a lot of cattle. I know they have a lot of sheep.
Large spider meat, I believe they have as well.
Spiders and snakes, delicious. Yes. But it's just funny that you would pick a fight with that. It'd be like, it'd be like him being like, New Zealand,
it doesn't make any sense.
But it's a global trade war ostensibly, because he's imposing tariffs on literally every country, even those, I guess, we're no longer in the big free trade act anymore. We're out of that, so that doesn't matter. There's no allies any longer. It's just, we're going to get ours. Economy be damned. How are the stock markets handling that, Nate? Are they
the stock markets are not handling the tariffs very well, and the uncertainty of it all. And I think it was funny. I forget where I saw the post, but somebody posted a screenshot of 25% tariffs, then 50% tariffs, and back down to 25%, and they called it the first intraday tariff chart. that
Yeah,
has
it's like a
ever
tariff
existed.
market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, the stock markets, the global markets are not responding to that well. I mean, obviously, there's
Yeah.
uncertainty for businesses in the United States. They don't know how much it's going to cost to make their product. They don't know how much it's going to cost consumers. Consumer confidence continues to drop. I mean,
And we again, I know we said this in the last one, but it's becoming more prevalent. I'm hearing from my relatives in Oklahoma, for example, who, by the way, I do not see eye to eye with politically at all. But I'm hearing this from them now, where they're saying like, we're seeing signs like at, I think Walmart's probably for them, but in other stores like that, big chain stores, Target, Walmart, etc., saying that they're seeing signs that prices are going to go up because of the tariffs, and we're sorry, but there's nothing we can do about it. And people are like, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean?
wait, huh?
What do you mean things are going to go up? And then they're like,
Huh?
they're showing pictures of stuff like they bought it last week, and then they're showing the price this week. And I'm hearing more about the eggs. Saw
The
at an
leopard eating my
11.99 a dozen eggs in Oklahoma this last week. 11.99 an egg for a dozen eggs. That's $1 per egg.
That's
Jesus
insane.
Christ.
That's insane. So the leopard eating my face party is actually eating faces.
Yeah, and so I have not firsthand accounts of these. This is secondhand through my family, but the thing that became very clear was they are very pro-tariff until they're shown only through dollars what tariffs do to them.
Well, they don't even know
They
what they don't.
they have heard explanations of what tariffs will do, and they don't believe it. And now that the tariffs are in place and the stores put up the signs saying, sorry, prices are going up because of tariffs, here are the new prices. And then they yell at the people working there for minimum wage. They still have to pay those prices. Now they're anti-tariff.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. But it's always the
very,
way.
very telling.
It's always the way. It doesn't matter. Like they're all for it until suddenly it happens to them. We could do a whole show on people affected by Trump's deportations that voted for Trump, that people that are affected by the Doge cuts that voted for Trump, farmers that are affected by tariffs and the floodings in California from Trump turning the water on, that are, that voted for Trump and are now hurt by him and that are suddenly going, huh? It's the same. It's
Yeah.
it in the morbid example of this is when we saw people dying, anti-vaxxers dying from COVID, they're taking off their mask at their last breath to their relatives, either on the phone or behind behind glass, say, I wish I had taken the vaccine, with their dying breath, and this is to a lesser extent that same thing. You are consistently voting against your own interests because you either think it can't happen to you, or haha,
Right.
I'm gonna own the libs, or
Right.
it's just because you're so team Trump, or team this one side, you think everything the other side does is bad, and your side can do no harm, that you keep voting this way. And it takes getting punched in the gut for you to realize that maybe this isn't the right way to do it.
And it's just going to keep happening. The voters have a combination of a striking lack of empathy and then just impetuous hubris. Like they just and then when it finally hits them that this is happening to them and it's because of their actions, is the only moment where they realize it. I don't mean to laugh at people and their hardships, obviously, but there are just so many. The measles thing, we talked about measles last week. These are these staunchly anti-vaccine RFK fanatics in Texas, and they're now at the point where their children are getting measles and being hospitalized and being physically hurt, and in some cases, which we'll see more of soon, I'm sure, are dying because of this. And it's not until those moments where they realize that they've lost everything that they're willing to say, I wish that I had done differently.
And I want to quickly point out, I think on the last episode I mentioned that RFK was trying to compare the number of measles outbreaks in the previous year to the number of measles outbreaks in 2025, saying, hey, look, it's less than 2025.
February.
And you're like, it's only February, but I want to officially announce that today, the number of measles cases in 2025 has officially crossed the entire year in 2024. And so, unfortunately, this is spreading. It's getting worse. It's not going well.
Yeah, and it's like we said, it's one of the most contagious viruses out there. It has debilitating long-term effects for many people, and it can cause death in young children and adults. And so
listen,
we're in a really bad place with that.
Vaccine mandates is something that we can debate, all the time. I understand.
They don't care about. I want to just be really quick on this,
okay.
But they don't care about that.
Okay, that's
the administration will never, the current one will never mandate that you get a vaccination, and they want you to think that that's as far as it goes. But they are going to try and dismantle the scientific studies.
So that's what
services
exactly.
offered around vaccination as a practice.
So what I am saying is that I know people who I care about who have lost their job because they refused to get a vaccine. And there were reasons behind it. I know, there are even medical reasons behind it.
Your choice.
That I understand, and it's your choice. And so this isn't the argument that I'm making here. The argument is what you just pointed out, is that this administration doesn't want you to see the science. They don't want to do any study. They want to dismantle science. They don't want there to be any studies. They just want to come out and tell you what's bad, and you take it at face value, and that's the end of it. It's the same thing with what Congress has done for the last 20, 30 years or whatever it's been, where they don't want to do studies on gun violence. Because if you actually saw those studies, you'd see the reality. You'd see the reality of the situation.
And it's another mechanism of control. I mean, because currently vaccinations in their current incarnation are ostensibly controlled substances. It's sort of like illicit drugs and things like that, right? Like you can't get human growth hormone without like your doctor's approval and heavy involvement. But you can't get a vaccine without the government's approval and letting this go out widespread this way. And so there's a difference between not advocating as a government for mandatory vaccinations, which is one thing, and a lot of people feel that way, and I think that there is a moral argument to have there. But then for them to say, also, we're not going to make it easy for you to get vaccinations. In fact, we're going to make it difficult to get them, because we're going to if not outlaw them, then make them there's so much bureaucracy in the way between you and your vaccine that it's basically impossible.
Right.
That is a different argument that you will never win. Yeah. It's just a mechanism of control.
And I want to just point out, I hear RFK say incredibly incorrect things all the time. But one of the things that he has said regarding measles, I don't have the clip right now, but he said this, is that, if there were no vaccines for it, well, then people would get it, and they would gain immunity from it. And that would be the end of it. And okay, let's go back and look at the charts from before vaccines, and you can see exactly what was happening. It's just simply not true. In fact,
I mean, the survivors got immunity for it.
Sure.
You have to let so many people die for that to be true. It's just, it's not a moral stance to take. You're basically saying, I want to take this scientific breakthrough that has saved millions and millions of lives, and I want to do away with it, basically killing those millions instead, because the survivors will just have immunity anyway, and they won't have these dubious side effects from immunizations.
Well, I don't think
these are cases, I assume.
Yeah, I don't think we want 4 million cases of the measles. I don't think we want that.
Yeah, for those of you just listening, Nate's sharing some graphs with us on how vaccinations specifically have impacted the number of lives with the measles vaccine, but also tetanus, whooping cough, tuberculosis, and polio. Is
Now,
probably
I
the
want
big
this to this kind of speaks to what you were just saying. This is number of lives saved by vaccination. And this is obviously a rough estimate, right? But it is, if you gave every child in the US measles, which would effectively happen if you didn't have a vaccine for it, there'd be a certain percentage of those that would die. That's just how it works, okay? And from 1974 to 2004, it the estimate is 93.7 million lives have been saved from the measles vaccine. This means that it didn't spread, it didn't get to these people, and the estimated percentage of people that would have died didn't die because of the vaccines. Tetanus,
right.
28 million people. Whooping cough, 13 million people. Polio, 1.57 million people. Vaccines save lives. So yes, we can have the discussion over mandates, over your rights. I believe it should be between you and your doctor, what's best for you, what's best for your health. But if it's simply I'm going to trust what the government says to me, I'm going to trust what a former heroin addict, who admittedly has brainworms is saying to me without seeing any of the science, you're not doing yourself any favors and you're hurting people around you.
Yeah, and I think that in a lot of this, a lot of people lose the idea of scope here. I mean, 93 million people is a
Over
little
30
more,
years.
yeah, over 30 years is a little more than losing everyone in California twice.
It's 30% of the US population, right? I mean,
Yeah, like
it's
I need everyone to understand the scope here. I mean, you're talking about, like you said, it's probably more accurate. Like a third of the United States over this 50-year period would die from measles.
so I have a hard time balancing or understanding where the people who are like Elon Musk, for instance, very anti declining birth rate. We got to do everything we can
Yeah,
to
yeah,
increase the birth rate. So here are the things that the GOP is doing to help increase the birth rate, making it unlivable for the working class to have children.
right.
Putting out a bunch of scientific disinformation so that people don't get vaccinated and die. Only caring about babies in the womb until after they're born and then die. So what the hell are you
Yeah,
talking about?
it's how I know that the entire thing is a grift from people like Elon Musk, because they don't actually care about population size. If they cared about population size, they'd want to keep people alive and they'd want them to be healthy and thriving in an efficient, performant part of the economy, because that's what they care about. But if you're trying to do away with the measles vaccine, well, that's not what you're doing. You just want babies to be born. You don't actually care if they survive. That's not important.
I mean, this is just biology. This is just science. Okay, if your bodies understand that it's in an environment where it's thriving, you're more likely to want to have children. That's just biology. That's just kind of how humans are built. And we are in a situation now where there are families that are waiting in line for bread. I mean, that's just the way it
Yeah,
is. They're
yeah.
not getting families are not getting enough vitamins in their household. They're not eating enough food. They're seriously stressed, lots of anxiety, and it's not getting any
And
better.
but that's the whole. I mean, it gives the game away when you think about that exercise that we're going through here, right? Because the billionaires, they need these people to exist because they're in the grinder. That's what the economy
Right,
runs on, is
right,
the people who do these things. And
right.
so if, for instance, you had cheap, available and affordable, like contraception as an example, then you might still be having that sex that you love so much, but maybe not the babies that the economy demands.
But if for instance one person in the household could easily support the entire family, whether it be the mother, the father, whatever type of household you're in, one person could
Mm-hmm.
support the family, you'd also be more likely to have children, right? And if you have
Yeah.
children, you're still, the more children you have, the more you're going to be a consumer in the economy, right? You're gonna have to buy more things for your kids and bigger homes and bigger things and bigger whatever. I mean, there's clearly they don't care about the long-term benefits of the working class. They care about
No.
getting rich now, benefiting themselves, and they don't care if the working classes are the ones that are going to pay for it.
And to be clear here, Nate's talking about all of the elected officials, not just the GOP. This is Schumer. This is the Democrats who bend the knee on the budget bill that's coming through. Like, these are the elected officials because they're richer than you and I will ever be.
I mean, Nancy
that's
Pelosi like clasps her hands at the young little kids and tells them to shut up while she gets her insider stock information. You know, so the people who are mad, like the people on the right who are mad at like Nancy Pelosi, turn around and look at the people behind you, because there are people like Mike and I and other people with left-leaning politics that can do both. We can see that it's happening on both sides. So grow up, you know?
Yeah, and maybe call your elected official and tell them that they're doing a terrible job.
That's a good place. That's a
if
good
you're
note.
them, you should call your elected official and tell them that they're doing a really bad job of representing you against this horrible, horrible administration.
That's a good note to end on. Call your reps. Call
your reps, like and subscribe, leave a comment. Bam.
In that order. And if you can only get to
in that order,
do the first thing. But then, you know, if you can do the first thing, do the other ones. All right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks everybody for joining us today. We're gonna keep an eye out for all the latest news and developments on all the stories that we talked about today. So again, like Mike said, be sure to like and subscribe. You can find us on our website at blue-sedition.com. We couldn't put Blue Sedition together because it looks like Blues Edition. You know, so and then also you can find us on Blue Sky. All of our links are in on our bio on YouTube. But that's where we're most active, is on Blue Sky. So until next time, everybody, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.